Martin, I've been super eager to have this conversation. You worked for 25 years with retailers, and now you switch side to the other side of the table, to the vendor side, joining Avensia. And I'm looking forward to hear more from you on how your experience has been on the PIM space and the involvement in that and the challenges. So, joining Avensia, now working on the vendor side, what is like the things that you see is the most important delivering a PIM? And what has been like kind of your hot potato when you're looking into PIM deliverance?
Yeah, thank you so much, Einar. It's been also been looking forward to this chat. There's a lot of things that I've realized. I have a lot of good understanding from a customer's perspective. I never got fully deep into how it was for the other colleagues in the field. I had some information, of course, but now being on the other side, I have so much clarity and visibility that is very refreshing and enlightening to say. So what I see is that there are a lot of companies that has a PIM system. They perhaps got it during the 2010s, which was 15 years ago today, and this this setup perhaps is not for the times today, so to speak. There is a lot of things that has changed during these years. And some of these companies have not updated their process working with the PIM as they have perhaps should have done. And there's a lot of potential, but also a lot of things to consider. Perhaps the companies doesn't see the value that they did back in the day. So there's also some challenges to relaunch the PIM system and the value it creates. So we talk a lot about the traditional PIM, but also the next generation of PIM. And that is something I look forward to discussing in more depth today.
You're talking about relaunching the PIM. What do you mean with that? Is that related to having legacy systems for too long, or?
Yeah, I think the role of the PIM system is came from a need and a demand where we have a very mixed use of channels, where we still had the print channel and also the online channel. And the print channel, it didn't grow, it stagnated and disappeared. And alongside the online, first e-commerce purely, and then social media and other channels grew. So has been a very big shift. But what we see is that many classical retailers that became more omni-channel retailers during these years, the complexity in their offering, in the customer offering, and therefore their system setup and their landscape is so different today than it was when perhaps they implemented this back in the day.
No,
So there
that's
is a
good
lot
point.
of potential here to take a retake on the whole process and the value creation of a PIM solution.
Oh, that's something I can relate to working in the vendor side for all these years, seeing like the first generation PIMs, as you said, coming out of the need of both maybe commerce and the traditional print editions, like all the catalogs, and the first PIMs kind of been, at least in the Scandinavian market, being born out of that, and sticking around with that kind of like the first generation PIMS doesn't really solve the problems that we see now or the challenges. So, but eh, would you say that's like the most in the different PIM projects you've seen? Is like having a suit that fits? Is that like the biggest challenge, or do you see other challenges?
There are other challenges as well, and there are many different types of companies, but companies that were born digital, that started with e-commerce relatively late in this process and then have grown very, very rapidly perhaps who started stores as both as building their brand, building their community. They are moving at such a different pace than we did back in the day. And the horizon, the time horizon, the perspective on where you have an idea, where you launch a campaign, where you launch a new offering, it is not even days, it's hours for some of the customers that has this business set up. So the demands has been so changed over the time, and we need, of course, to support that process and fully understand these type of needs in the market. And for that, you need to have a different take on how you work with your product data and how you collaborate on it, how you enrich it, and how you can move faster, basically.
So, seeing this evolving through the years and not being able to like kind of fulfill the visions you had with your PIM system, what is it costing the companies? What have you seen, like the financial impact when doing e-commerce?
Well, there's a lot of data that needs to be collected, onboarded. Uh, some companies have a very structured way of onboarding data because perhaps they have a good setup with known big brands, global brands, which have everything in line and ordered and in a very good way. But many other companies have such a broad variety of suppliers, which are different sizes, different levels of maturity when it comes to sharing data. So that is one key point. So there's a lot of work to both onboard product data into your PIM system, but some companies also see value to enrich it with their business knowledge and their knowledge of their consumers and their customers to enrich the data even further. And that is very labor intensive. Perhaps you had better possibilities to do that a couple of years ago, but as time flies, it goes so quickly, and you had perhaps very high ambitions, but it doesn't match what you can afford to have in resources. So you have all these products. You need to enrich it. You feel that need. You can see the benefits, the effects of having that in getting more hits on your website, more visits, better conversions, but you don't have the organization for it. So something has to be true. Either you need more people or fewer products. But it's an either or, it's an and also. So it's a very difficult place for some companies, I believe. And there is a lot of potential going forward with the technologies that are available, of course. So, but the process for this has to be updated to the times we live in.
So, for me, being selling PIM systems, and for you being buying PIM systems, until now we were on the same side, I guess, doing advice and trying to help companies. What I seen is like the things you just mentioned, all the challenges to get the attention internally, especially in the maybe in the top management, in the C level, or even on the board level, which historically, when you're doing investments, it's so much easier to advocate for the commerce solution because it's like right in your face. But the PIM solution that is supposed to fix your data, what's your experience? How do you get like the focus on PIM as an important asset for your company and important success, uh, key for success?
Great question. It takes a leadership that has the patience and to keep on with the vision and understanding the key value of PIM data. But the problem is, of course, in hard times when it's difficult, you're not close to the transaction. A transaction is very, very easy to connect. It is very easy to calculate and to
Very.
measure. But what leads to a transaction is more difficult. It's even more difficult to see the correlation sometimes. So you have to have champions in the organization that can wave this flag very, very enthusiastically and with a lot of effort to get the resources, get the attention, and get the understanding that this is needed. This is an investment. It is not directly benefiting sales, but it will benefit sales if you do it the right way. But there is a lot of potential here as well, as I see it, because even if you have thousands and tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of products, you still have a case where you could put your efforts where it counts the most. So I think that's something you also should look into, and there are tools for that because you only have a finite amount of resources in any given company, and you have to use that wisely.
Well, my experience, like if we go all the way back to the start of this industry, like go 25 years back when we had a lot of like the very first investments in e-commerce. Companies were buying e-commerce, plugging into their systems, backend systems, and they didn't have the data to drive any commerce uh, kind of end user journey on it. It was like shit in, shit out, kind of. And then the whole PIM industry involved because you actually had to have all your data that was only managed for internal use to be explored for external audience, of course. But even though they realized that, and even though we have been working with PIM for 25 years, there's still like this really, really eager to optimize the customer journey and forgetting what the customer actually are looking at, want the product. So the kind of the product first philosophy that get your data right to get your optimize your customer journey and your e-commerce is still kind of missing. Is that something that we from the PIM industry is kind of whining about, or have you seen that?
Yeah, I think
Do you agree about that?
I fully agree, and I'm an evangelist of PIM and everything that has to do with having good structure and investing in that. So I'm fully aligned with that. But it is like you say, you focus on a lot of things that is around the main subject, and it perhaps doesn't sound as cool, and it's interesting, but sometimes it's always the product. It starts with the product. You can be nice, you can be a good salesperson, you can have a very nice store, you can have a nice website, it could look good, everything can be great. You can all the delivery options, everything. But if the product is not to the customer's interest, everything falls apart. So I think it always starts with the product. And then it, of course, has to be attractive. It has to have the right pricing for the right customer. It has to be available and all these things. But sometimes it's always starting with the product.
Great. So let's take the next topic here, because looking at product first, okay, to have knowledge for product first, you probably have to have good KPIs and measurements on why your PIM matters. Any experience you like to share on that? Like, how can we like measure the success of PIM?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good ways to do that, but a lot of companies that I see has not reached that far. There's a lot of one-directional data transfer to PIM, and that is sort of the problem for many PIM users today, I believe. It is where you put in data and it stays there. Perhaps you go to update it and enrich it, but there's very little back and forth. So I think having a better understanding of when you're working with your PIM data, how many recent visits has it been to the product page on your website, for example? what is the sales numbers. That's traditionally things that is not meant for the PIM, and it's not for the PIM to handle. But it's very important to utilizing your resources in the most efficient way, because you only have so many products that you can enrich, and you have to put your efforts into where it counts the most. So I think that's something we could also do more in the PIM field, to broaden it, to understand the process in the companies better, and what they actually need to make that selection in a better way.
Martin, we were talking earlier about how legacy system and not shifting systems soon enough creates problems. So what kind of problems do you typically see from keeping your legacy PIM system for involving your commerce channels?
Exactly, and to that point, many companies introduced a PIM system. Perhaps they were not even looking for a PIM system. They got a PIM system as a result of getting a new e-commerce platform, and
In by accident.
yeah, sort of. So they understood the need, and it was to facilitate the launch of a new e-commerce platform, which was enough of a good case to get the PIM system. And with that, they understood more about the product data and product structures. Perhaps the companies also expanded to new markets where it made more sense, with languages and multi-markets. So it made sense. But still, there is, in many cases, that this PIM implementation is still viewed in the company as a back-end e-commerce component. And perhaps the stakeholders in the company is still the e-commerce department. And if you go back a couple of years, e-commerce in companies was very, very powerful, so to speak. It has a lot of mandates because it was so important for the companies to take that edge and be competitive. Even if you had a chain of stores, you wanted to have a good e-commerce platform and be fully omni-channel. So they did a lot of investment. But now today, e-commerce is commerce. Shops are commerce. There's no E or anything before commerce. It's just commerce, right? So there's a lot of knowledge in the C-level, in the leadership team about this, and also in the boards, on directors, etc. So this is not a new topic. So the mandate has sort of shifted. And that's also something that would be interesting to talk about, because it is a broader question. And if you got your PIM system and it's still stuck behind the e-commerce platform and the e-commerce department, perhaps you don't even know, or you fully know what it's for.
But if you realize then, okay, I have to shift, I have to swap to a different kind of PIM approach, a different kind of system, how to do that with all legacy systems? Do you have any advice?
Yes, and there's a lot of other things happening in that field, where you look at your system landscape to be for the times we live in and for the coming years ahead. And you have a lot of other systems that are in that legacy space that are stopping the companies to move forward with their customer offering. Usually the ERP system is mentioned. So a trend that we see is that you put your ERP system more behind the scenes into your finance department to manage, and you have your business users in more modern tools. So this is a trend where we have the best of breed, and there the PIM system becomes even more important, because in the earlier setup you had a lot of product data, perhaps still in the ERP system, and the PIM system was like a complement to that, to perhaps handle some more structure, categories, hierarchies, and images primarily. But when you move that ERP system further back in the company, a lot of that the ERP handle now must be in the PIM system. So that broadens the scope, and it also opens up for more possibilities to relaunch this in the company. There's a lot of functions and departments in a retail and omnichannel company that could benefit highly of working more in the PIM system to be earlier with the product in its life cycle and also follow it during the journey further. So it's not a system you go to copy and paste information that you already have curated somewhere else.
As a PIM vendor, we have been talking a lot with customers about handling so-called fast data out of PIM. And with fast data, I mean data that is consumed very fast and is changing very fast, of course, like price or promotions and others. And the claim in the market has been that fast data do not belong in the PIM system. But kind of like bold statement is, yes, you said that because you couldn't handle it in the old PIM systems. And in fact, we think that price might have a home in the PIM system. What do you think about that?
That is music to my ears because I think that's been a pain
Happy to
point
hear that.
for many customers that sort of makes what we're talking about, the PIM system in that value chain, or what kind of importance it has, reduced because it can't handle that single thing that makes it complete. But there is, of course, a good reason for not handling price, but it all depends on what type of business it is. Some businesses has a pretty straightforward price model. It's not that difficult. Other companies have very complex price
Of
models,
course.
and then it perhaps is not the best place. But it all depends case by case. So I think that's a lot of good possibilities with opening up fast data, like you mentioned, but also the campaigns that are very quick today, that goes from idea to reality in hours, not days, not weeks, not months preparation sometimes. You have to be fast. And if you can't do it
How
in the PIM, where should you do
Hmm.
it then? Well, you're in the
Oh,
world
in
of
the
Excel, and we don't want to live in that world, right?
No, certainly not. We don't want that. How about other type of data? Let's talk about customer reviews, right? Customer review data has been traditionally in the commerce system, but should it be connected to the product in your PIM system?
I think product reviews and all kinds of customer feedbacks, both actual feedback, like ratings, but also actual reviews and the contents of those reviews, perhaps even the images that some reviews are included with the customer, how they use the product. It's so valuable data because if you can get that into the PIM system and use that to understand how the customer uses the product. But it's not only the positive reviews, it's also the negative reviews. It could highlight, didn't we explain this well enough? Is the product description not clear? Has the customer bought the product they thought it was for some use case, but it actually didn't fulfill that use case? So I think the really smart companies, they use their customer reviews with their product and assortment team to refine and better their offering to the customer. Because if the customer doesn't like the product, then it tarnishes your brand, basically.
Martin, I would like to talk a little bit about replatforming. If you decided to change your old PIM system, as a PIM vendor, we are doing both, of course, both the big bang, replatforming, introducing a new platform, or the alternative where you work in parallel with the old one, introducing new functionality step by step, changing like smoothly. What do you prefer and what's your experience on this?
Well, we hope that the customer comes to us and already has the insight and the knowledge that it is another PIM system or something better that they're looking for. We would, of course, want to fully understand their current process, how they work with the PIM solution today, and what their organization looks like, all the cross-functionals, the dependencies, and the work streams that exist in the whole process of sourcing a product and selling the product. So that is a very important discovery to do. And from
Yeah.
there, we can guide them. We can also show them very good examples of what other companies has done, because usually when you're in a retail environment, you focus on one thing at a time. You can't be looking at PIM systems every season, right? You have your moment in time to do this, and perhaps it goes 5, 6, 7 years because there is the good opportunity to have a look at this field. And a lot has happened over the years, and a lot of progress has been made in other companies and other areas. So that is also something that we also always show. What have we done with other customers? What have others found out? And bring that information as well. And that could inspire the companies to see it in a new light. What we don't want is that companies see that they perhaps don't need a PIM just because they're not using it right. So we really want to guide them and have that discussion so we find the right solution for them.
So you like to focus on why. Why do you have a PIM? And how are you using it?
Exactly.
More than what kind of PIM should you move to or buy. So it's more about the need and the process, right?
Exactly. So it has to fit the process, and also the process at the company when they implemented their current or old PIM is perhaps very different. The demands are very different. They could be in a totally different stage in their maturity as a company. They could have expanded to new markets. They could have added many new complexities that they didn't have. So usually when you get the system, you sometimes just grow out of it. It doesn't fit your needs anymore, and it's totally natural. It happens to all of the companies, so to speak.
Martin, I would like to talk a little bit about why your existing PIM solution is failing. My experience selling PIM systems is quite often that you sell it to 20 people and then 18 leave the rooms and there's 2 people left that's actually going to use it. Very single in one silo. And even though it's supposed to work in a multi-channel, cross-functional environment, do you see this as well and how to solve this challenge?
Actually, it is become very dependent on a few individuals. And that is never a great setup because it's dependent on them, and they are usually the administrators of the platform. I think the PIM systems today are so much more easy to use. So it's not a high barrier for people in marketing, in assortment, product development, etc., to be in these platforms. But if you go back a couple of years, it was very difficult to work in a PIM system. So this is also something that you should look into as a company. Their barrier is not that high. It is a cross-functional tool that you should work around the product data. There's so many uh, points in time where you need to input information. So that's also something that's perhaps you think of you having a product, you enrich it, and you're done the same day. No, it could go over months because you have a sourcing process, you have a marketing process. So it could be on a very long journey until it reaches the website and the consumer. So it is actually a very cross-functional team effort to launch a product sometimes. And sometimes it's very, very fast. You just onboard data and you have it tomorrow. So for that reason, I think it's very good to understand your organization and the types of users that should be involved in this. Because if you invest in a system, but you don't have the users on board, then no system will be successful. It doesn't matter how good it is.
So moving your PIM system from a niche product for specialists to a tool for your organization. That's the key here.
Yes, definitely. And there's a lot of opportunity to introduce the PIM in the process earlier. I truly believe that there is so many steps. It could be dependent on what type of business you are, of course. Some business just buy from local distributors from known brands. Then it's more of a data onboarding, and it's in that process. Other companies has their own manufacturing or their own sourcing, and it takes several months to go from the idea of the product. You perhaps design the package of the product, and you put in a lot of content, the images that are needed for the packaging. It gets manufactured, produced, shipped, and then gets to your warehouse where you can actually start selling it. But in the traditional sense, sometimes the PIM system, which was a result of being a part of the e-commerce, only got introduced when the product was at the warehouse. So you had a lot of work with the products and a lot of content created in separate systems or Excel or other places. And the task to just take that and put it into the PIM system, then the PIM system doesn't feel as important, doesn't do that important work that it should. So there's a lot of potential to introduce it earlier in the process for many companies. And there is something we look at and help customers with today.
We see that as well as a SaaS vendor of PIM, that the need or interest in PIM from also, as you see, upstream, downstream, from producers, from distributors, are increasing because you can introduce product data much earlier in the process and bringing more value into your digital channels. Next topic that we see a lot, I wonder if you see it, is that still one of the main competitor, if you can call it competitor, to PIM is the Excel sheet. What's your experience?
Yes, we see a lot of companies using Excel sheets and a little bit more of what they would be proud of to share, probably. It's a lot of them in many different processes. So it's sort of the oil that makes the machine go around in some organizations. But it shouldn't perhaps be this way. And it is usually a result of not having done the right work and the correct work in setting up a system landscape for the processes that the organization actually has. So there is a lot of potential in looking at the process where you have, example, the setting up a campaign, doing new assortment development, and looking at how do the companies actually work. And if you have the mindset and understanding of what a PIM system can do, you could find many opportunities where perhaps they're not doing it the right way. They're missing something that perhaps already exists and could help them and do it a lot better when it comes to the cross-functional way of working and being collaborative on the efforts. The problem with the Excel sheets is that it gets stuck in those, and you solve the task and you get your campaign running. You get your customers to buy the products and you get happy customers. But the problem is it's very difficult to repeat. All the learnings and all the data that you collected and solved there and then is very non-repeatable. So I think that is something that many companies struggle with, that they do sort of the same error over and over and over again and repeat the mistakes sometimes.
Do you think it's Or from your experience, is it more lack of training or lack of introducing PIM to different departments, or maybe both?
I think it's both, and it's also in a very high stress and fast moving environment. When you work with consumer goods and you want to get your offering out before the competitors, you have an energy to get it done, and top of mind, let's just do it in Excel, and it gets done there and then. But then you don't invest in anything. You have to redo it somewhere else later, and that's never a good thing. So I think it's a little bit of both, like you say.
But we always encourage our customers to have like super users acting as ambassadors, kind of internally, to try to avoid this. Is this something that you have been working with, Martin?
Yes, we have had super users, and but my experience is that the role of the PIM shifted during the years as well, where you had
Mhm.
like a dedicated PIM super user team that worked with product information, and that shifted to be more for the marketing part of the company together with the product assortment. And it is difficult to keep the knowledge that you did when you implemented a system. The best knowledge you have is usually when you just implement a new PIM system to match the process that is for that time. Everybody's trained, everybody is enthused and fully on board. But then as time flies, knowledge gets perhaps lost during the years. And therefore the utilization of your PIM system also goes down. So that is something, of course, you have to do like a retake sometimes. And perhaps it's the tool that is not sufficient anymore and supporting the process. Or it is that they're not just working in the right way anymore.
So when we are talking about legacy, it's not only the system, but it's also maybe the process, how it's integrated, operated internally in the company. You have to like stop and redo all of those.
Exactly. It could be that the integration go through a very slow moving part that makes that the output when you do a change in your PIM system, it takes a day or two for it to effectuate out to the sales channel. And that is perhaps not the PIM system's fault. It's just how it was set up one time. And then that delay was not an issue because the process didn't need it to be faster. It was okay to have it like that. But then if that stayed and didn't get updated today, it's totally unacceptable. It needs to be so much quicker. So that's also something perhaps it's very good to take a look at. It's perhaps not always the PIM system. It could be how it's integrated, how it's set up, where it's at in the system landscape that needs to be revised and looked upon.
These days, Martin, if you're using your PIM as you always used it to enrich and update and distribute information, I think you're missing a major switch, and that's AI, isn't it? And AI, and we are saying AI and PM is a perfect match.
I think that's a match made in heaven, actually. It what the PIM system was actually waiting for to happen, but not knowing it back in the day. Because the idea of enriching and curating and putting a lot of efforts on your project was perhaps never fully economically viable to do. But now, with the tools that you have, you can use them in so many ways to utilize your resources, your highly skilled and competent business personnel to put their efforts in the right products, on the right categories that matter the most. And AI is a great tool for this because you have so much opportunity to find where your content could be improved. You could analyze your whole product catalog with AI to find where it could be discrepancies and errors or room for improvement. And then you could notify your skilled personnel to put their efforts where it matter the most, so to say.
Do people trust it?
I think
or are they
it's a
just talking about
process.
it?
It is a process to trust the AI, because you have to show the super users and the skilled personnel that that it outputs the things that they can stand by. So it's not going from full AI and fully automated. You goes from perhaps you did 100% of the work. Now you only do like 25% of the work. So you work in like a manage by exception workflow where you perhaps get notified where you should look at and you put your efforts into that instead of doing all of the work.
Martin, introducing AI to your PIM. Is there things you can do now that wasn't even possible before?
Exactly. I mean, that's something that we work with customers. Perhaps the first step and the natural step with working with AI is that you take small ones. You try something that's manageable, that you can validate, that you can trust. But you usually have the mindset of, okay, we're doing this today. How could we do that a bit more efficient with AI? How could we automate some steps with AI? And that is the right way to go. You should start like that. But you could also turn it around from an inside out to the outside in perspective. What is now possible, like you ask, what is now possible to do with AI that we couldn't even conceive of or think about doing before? Because it would demand us to hire 300 people and put them in a great office, but we would never do that. So it would never get done. Now you can have AI running in parallel. You have the agentic AI together with the generative AI. So we have a lot of potential to set up your process, understanding that, and automate a lot of steps. And it can run 24 hours a day and do a lot of work that would never be done. So it's not a question of perhaps reducing your personnel or having cost cutting. It's just that you can do so much more, and it's not in competition because you wouldn't hire people to do it anyways. So it is just on top. It's something you can now do that you would never even think about before.
So we are not just changing how we enrich, but actually how we work. The whole work process is changing now inside PIM.
Looking at the process today, I think it's very key to put your resources where they matter the most. And you have so little of them. So you have to use AI almost to handle large product catalogs efficiently. And if you don't, your competitors will do that, and you will be competed by them, so to speak.
At Bluestone PIM, we are promoting agnostic approach to AI, meaning that you can swap models based on cost and capabilities. Uh, Do you see the advantage of it, or what's your experience around it using different models?
Well, it is so fast moving a landscape today. So what you know today is not what you should know in 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' times. So since everything moves so fast, you need to be agnostic, but also transparent. A lot of companies really want to have control and they want to have trust, and they don't want that their unique sensitive data leaks to the AI
Yeah.
models. So for as a vendor like Bluestone, you have to be very open that the company can bring their own AI model on their account, on
Yeah.
their billing, so to speak, and in their uh, domain. So that is something that's really important, I believe.
Yes. Talking to brands, we see that like they're fear that there will be everyone will look and sound the same. They want to bring their own tone of voice, building their own model on top. And this is probably super important going forward. How to bring your unique sound or language into your AI models.
Exactly. It is your competitive advantage. It's your recipe that you put in your lockbox, so to speak. So it is very, many companies are very hesitant to using the open models, the generic models that are out there. You don't necessarily need to train your own model, but you want to have your own instance of that model in your own safekeeping and safeguarding.
Martin, I have to ask you, when I have the opportunity, with your experience from 25 years from the brand side, do you have an advice to us as a PIM vendor to help companies like you've been working in?
Yes, I would recommend that you really listen and learn to understand the company just a bit beyond just the PIM delivery, to actually understand the process a little bit more broadly, because there will be a lot of information and opportunities in that to understand where you could develop and extend your functionality, but also give a lot more benefits to the companies and make it easier to handle the vast product data that they need to enrich and perfect every day. I believe you do this already in many cases, but there is a need to better understand the process at the companies today, I believe.
I guess that's why a Bluestone PIM and Avensia works together, right? To combine and give the best out to the end customers.
Yes,
So thank you, Martin. It's been really, really great to talk with you.
likewise. Very good chat. Thank you so much.